Folks, how you doing? I'm just getting over the cold now. I should be on the mend, hopefully. If my mic goes off, it is because I am coughing or doing something similar. Always a really horrible part of the cold where it's gone, but you still got a really itchy chest. It's horrible. Anyway, hope you're doing well. If you're getting any models recently, after the current Games Workshop prices are going to go up in March, make sure you support local suppliers like Composite Games. If you use the promo code Northern Exile down below, you get an extra 5% off at checkout. Can't say fairer than that, and you go towards helping the channel as well. If you like what I do, the subscribe button is down below, the Patreon is down below, everything you need is down below, and the Discord is also down below, and it is free. So, head on over, have a little chat to us. Right. Hobby Nightmares time. Let's jump straight in, shall we? Straight in. Sorry, I'm cockney for a second there. Ugh. Chris says, "Hi North." Hello, Chris. "Wasn't sure whether to send this over to Discord or Patreon, so if this isn't the correct way, let me know. I'm sorry for my punctuation and spelling errors. I'll try my best to correct them." No problem. "Today I'm writing to you for some hobby advice and not a nightmare. I have been in the hobby for 6 years now. I first got into it for two reasons. The first, I stumbled across a Lewitton video, and my uncle is a long-time wargamer. Oh man, you're always so lucky. You are so lucky if you have an older gentleman in the family who is already into wargaming. You have such a leg up on everybody else who's going to be getting into the hobby. I honestly, like, it's a ridiculous leg up to have on everybody else. It's such an advantage to be able to have a guy there who can actually take you through the game and give you his time and actually, you know, show you the best parts of the hobby. That's awesome. I wish I had that. And I know a lot of other people wish that they had that as well. He will be important later. Okay. I really enjoy painting and feel like I'm pretty good at it. I'll try to attach some pictures. Yeah, I did see those. You're very good. You're very, very good. I try to go for a high tabletop standard. My problem comes from finding the motivation to paint. I'll go on spurts where I paint consistently for a week or two, and then I don't touch it for months. One of my problems for finding the motivation is I get kind of demoralised from my uncle's speed of painting. He's been in the hobby since the early 90s, where he fell headfirst into it as a way to get off of hard drugs, and he had his daughter. He was in a band in the Seattle music scene of the time, so you can imagine how heavy he was into drugs, and how heavy he got into miniatures. Anyway, I get demoralised by how fast he can paint. He can paint models in a week that would take me a month of consistent painting. Yeah, I mean, you say I know you say I know this shouldn't bother me, but it does. Okay. I will say this: your uncle was in a band, so he has natural artistic tendencies. I have noticed that in terms of painting miniatures, the best people are always the ones who are already into art. And when I mean art, I mean like the art. So I've seen writers and musicians be amazing painters out of nowhere. You know, they're like, I couldn't do a painting, I couldn't do anything like that, but I can paint these miniatures. So I think that's the weird thing about it. You know, like any 40k on Warhammer in general, and even the hobby in general, beyond Warhammer, I think it really does give an outlet to these people who don't think that they can. The models bring something out in the way that they look at a figurine or whatever. They look at a blank canvas and it's very intimidating. But when you give them an actual Warhammer model and something to work off of, they then get to like really sort of like with the stabilizers on, you know, like a scaffolding to climb up of. They can really let their artistic nature go to work for them, and I've noticed that a lot. People with like bad imaginations tend to be bad painters. It's weird, strange. Well, you know, unless you're using like you're literally I'm doing ultramarines from start to finish, you know. But so if somebody, some of the best paint jobs that I've seen have been like a word bearer's force, where they take the word bearer's colours and they give them a slight little twist as their own little nod to the word bearers, you know, that kind of a thing. Those have been the best painted armies, and they're always from people who are artistic in other ways. Anyway. He says, I also work construction remodelling apartments. So a lot of the time, I get home and just want to play or read or play video games. Am I just using this as an excuse? I want to paint more, but most of the time, I'd rather just do other things. What are your thoughts? I love listening to your videos on my way home from work. Thank you, man. Hope you're getting home safely. You're one of my favourite Warhammer YouTubers along with the Outer Circle. Oh, I'm sure I'll be glad to hear that. Have a good day, and thanks for reading. Like, Outer Circle, man, like, the amount of shit this dude gets, like, and I'm gonna say now, right? He's probably one of the nicest people I've met on YouTube. And the sheer amount of people who say to me, "Oh, that video you did with Outer Circle, don't you know he's toxic?" Like, dude, do you know how average Outer Circle is as a guy? He's just a guy who likes models. Like, there's a lot of unnecessary negative parasocial relationships that develop on YouTube. People like myself and Outer Circle, we don't have the subscriber count and numbers to be hated on, really. Let's be honest. Or to deserve hate. You can always be hated on, but to deserve hate, I don't think. You know what I mean? It's like one of those. We just like models, man. We like models, and we like the hobby, and you know, I get called a grifter because I talk about things that Games Workshop don't do very well, and it's always from people who, when you go on their like Instagram and stuff, just have a little look. It's always like praising Games Workshop and thank you for the free models you gave me, Games Workshop, and stuff like that. You know, so yeah, it's hard when people drink the Kool-Aid and they come after you. But thank you for saying that you like me and you like Outer Circle as well. It's nice to know. So, I would say, man, like, your problem isn't that you don't like the hobby. Your problem is that life is getting in the way, and that is one of the worst feelings that you can ever have. I have it as well. I really like playing video games. I'll be very honest. Like, painting models is like a distant third for me. You know, I like playing video games, I then like writing, and a distant third is I'll paint models, right? So I'll paint a few models a month, if that, you know. But I like it. I take my time, and I go through my models, and I make sure I do it right. And I'll have something on in the background when I'm doing it. When I was in America, painting my models got me through, like, pretty hard times. Towards the end of my relationship, I would just disappear and paint models and get it out of my brain, you know. For a little while, it was my little thing to go and do, away from everybody else, which was nice. So, I think the best way to do it is do exactly what I just did there, and try and work into your therapy. What I mean by that is, if you've had a hard day, sometimes the best thing to do isn't to come home and play video games, because then you're turning your brain off. Sometimes the best thing to do is to sit down and let your brain stay in sort of a taxiing mode. That's what you are when you're doing models. Let's be honest. You're doing a taxiing mode, so your brain isn't switched off. It's sort of just idling there as you're listening to whatever you're listening to, and you're painting. That's what I would do. I would try and make sure that if you've had a stressful day or a hard day at work, try and make sure that you're doing that. Or if you know you're off the next day, that's another good thing, right? If you know you're off the next day and you're going to get lots of time to relax, maybe say, I'm going to do 5 models tonight. Sit down, get your 5 models out, your 5 infantry-sized models, and paint them, right? Or at least get to a certain stage with those models. So, like, you know, I'm going to undercoat them, and then I'm going to ink them, then I'm going to dry brush them, and then I'm going to maybe highlight them before I do anything else, and then I'll leave it at that, right? Have a goal in mind for that night. That's always the main thing to do. Have a nice goal in mind of what you want to do and where you want to get to with a certain amount of models. Do that, and then stop, right? So know that you're going to be painting for an hour or 2. Best way to do that as well is get a painting station ready, where at a moment's notice, you can put water in a cup and go. You know? That's how your paint station should always look. Have the empty cup there, have all your stuff set out, so you can just go. If you want to sit down, get water, put it in the cup, and you're ready to go. You know? Most of the time when people say they don't want to do painting, it's because they've got to set it up first. And they just can't be bothered. They just want to switch the PlayStation on, or the PC or whatever, and start having a laugh, you know, rather than having to go out and do things. So, that's what I would do. Set yourself up for success. Have a clear goal in mind for your models that you want to do in the night. And if it's a school night, you know, where you might want to do other things as well, just say, I'm going to paint 1 model, or 2 models, or whatever. Do something, though. And always have your paint station ready to go. So it's less stress and less time that you need to waste getting yourself set up to paint. That's what I would do. Anyway, Moving on. Vidablo says, "Good afternoon, Northern. Vidablo here, and I wanted to share one of my favourite memories of playing Warhammer 40,000. Some background on my friends and I. We were brought up together in Japan, whilst working at the same regiment, US Marines, and would play Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, cool. I never thought, 30 years old and a Marine, I would start to get into D&D. But we would frequently go on lockdown due to Marines doing stupid drunken things out in town, or during typhoon season, we would have to batten down the hatches and ride the storm out. This environment leads to lots and lots of weekday drinking, and if I didn't start doing a hobby, I was going to drink myself to death. One of my buddies started running a D&D game, and I started painting his models for him. I used this for practice to get better at painting Warhammer models. Fast forward a few years, and we all ended up in North Carolina together, with even more service members who love nerding out. Now, to one of my greatest birthdays ever." I always like happy stories. "It was around 2018, 2019, and my 32nd birthday, I think." Guys are always like that. They always forget when their birthdays are. I've had so many people say to me, "How old are you?" And I go, 33, 4? I don't know. Somewhere around there. My buddies and I the buddies that I told you about all came over. All either active duty or veterans from the Marine Corps and Coast Guard. I got really, really, really into 2018 Kill Team, and so for my birthday, we decided to do a giant free-for-all Kill Team game. We turned a 6x4 foot table into a battlefield with beautiful terrain. We started with 3 people, and, as more friends arrived, we would come up with stories to make their kill teams late entries into the tournament. Like they were hiding in a destroyed tank, or they drop podded in, things like that, which allowed us to include shifting terrain as new people arrived. We then came up with the idea that as you finished a beer, Pabst Blue Ribbon, PBR, tall boys, roughly a pint-sized cans, for you Brits, thank you very much, you could slam down the beer as a new piece of terrain. This ended up being so freaking awesome because it started obstructing line of sight and could potentially save your boys or obstruct a charge. That's amazing. It's like you're desperate to not take a charge. You're just chugging your beer, like slamming it down on the table. You would walk around the room and see someone starting to chug, which meant that they were about to slam down some beer terrain to screw you up, and then would force you to do your turn quick before a magic beer cover could appear. It was so awesome. This is how we began getting more drunk than we already were. Then we were sad that some of our friends were getting wiped out as the evening drew on, so we decided that you could heal wounds or save your model from death if you took a shot. My God, this then took us into the fast lane of drunkenness, as you would scream when your character failed a save and would slam a shot bravely to save his life. This last game lasted for like 8 hours, including lots of loud boasts, cheering, and to tell you the truth, I do not remember who won or even how the game ended. I just remember coming downstairs the next morning to towers of PBR and little soldiers all over the damn place. This is an example of well-adjusted adults playing plastic men's on their birthday. Thanks, man. That was awesome. Thank you. That was absolutely... So, I have to say, that is a cracking idea for a hobbyist birthday party. Like, making terrain. I would say, don't put the beer can down. I would say, once you finished your beer, you can actually put down a little piece of terrain somewhere. That'd be a better way of doing it if you've got lots of spare terrain. The shot thing, well, that's always going to go tits up, let's be honest with you, when that starts happening. I'm going to take a sip of tea before we get into our next ranty one. Lovely stuff. Leviathan says, "Hi North, you've inspired me to get into writing and hearing your stories and your takes on what you change in the lore. From listening to your lore change rants, example that comes to mind being Black Legion. Couldn't agree more with your takes with Abaddon. Cheers, man. I have taken on quite a bit of mental advice you have put out on the channel which has changed not just my life for the better, but also my girlfriend's. Fantastic, man. I'll admit, I cringe most of the time when people call themselves or others influencers. However, I feel in this instance, it is rightly deserved, in the best way. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope you have someone that is able to lift you up the way you do with so many others that your videos reach. I truly do. Thank you very much, man. Cheers. A reason why I'm writing to you is I'd love to hear your take on what you would change about or rants that you have with the Necrons. Personally, I find myself in two minds with the retcon that occurred with them. Back in the tail end of 5th edition, I believe. Yeah, that's when they gave the Necrons more personality. Yeah. Yeah. I do like how they can have more stories about each dynasty giving more depth to the race, and certain unique characters such as Trazen going off and doing their own adventures. However, I do find myself missing the cosmic horror that they gave the setting of a robotic 1980s T-800 horde that can't be reasoned with, killing you for just existing to feed their ever-hungry gods. Yeah, that is something that I also... that is something that has been lost in the years since, yes. Yeah, anyway. I wonder if you could play around with an idea I had for one particular overlord, called Phaeron, as a short story or example of what or how you change Necrons in the potential / possible rant. More than happy for you to change it, as you're a fantastic writer. Thank you very much, man. Okay, let's read it, shall we? Let's read it together, and then we'll see where we go. And I want you guys in the comments down below to give this guy some ideas of what you would. I know you've got a lot of Necron players, so let me know what you think in the comments down below. So, Phaeron was one of the earliest to awaken, and wants to reverse the biotransference to escape this horrible. Okay, this is starting halfway through, man. A Necron Phaeron was one of the earliest to awaken. Wants to reverse the biotransference to escape this horrible emptiness that every Necron endures. Okay. Constantly observing humans, it's trapped in Tesseract labyrinths it has within its biovaults full of organic, sentient life forms. They would show normal civilians going about their everyday lives. One labyrinth can be of humans in a hive spire, whilst others living on paradise worlds. This is before the tower existed. Okay. Quick tip when brainstorming, okay? When brainstorming, bullet points work fine. Never start in media res, as in never start in the middle of things, because it's just confusing. And that's what you've done here. So I'm already trying to find it hard to stick towards what you're talking about. Anyway, she does this in order to learn how to interact with reality via an organic body. Again, as she finds herself caught in the fear of not being able to know what it's like to live again, quote unquote. Okay, this is a she. Okay, this is a Necron observing how humans live to try and figure out how she's meant to act as a normal human being. Okay, cool. The Phaeron also finds herself fascinated by the feeling it evokes within her observing them, something she has not felt since the biotransference. Could it be hope? Perhaps it can be conflicted emotions of hope mixed with dread. The fear of losing the emotions that the prospect of living again gives her. Here is when the existential grimdark comes in. She uses a cryptech that helps build the machine, who she has known since the beginning of the project, which has taken many millennia, whom she apologises to in a very insincere way, but states she had to use someone whose personality she would be able to recognise after the transfer was complete. Unfortunately, she comes to find that without the soul of the Catan, the Catan took from her, the subject would end up in a state of emptiness far worse than they currently experience in the metal shells. This horror drives her into madness, destroying the machine and all the flesh bags, humans, around her. Okay. The solution that the Overlord comes to, that alleviates her from this horrible truth, she deletes her memory of this. However, unbeknownst to her, she's been doing this for so long, as she has awakened, forever in the loop of finding out the true horror of never being able to revert back, but also resulting in not being able to tell the Silent King that their efforts of reverting back are all for naught. I like that. Okay, cool. Okay. I'm going to say this right now. As a character, this doesn't really work from a 40k standpoint. But as a short story, this would be amazing to read. This would be absolutely amazing to read. Now, I only know a surface level of Necron lore. I know a lot of people in my Discord know a lot more about it than me. So if you know that you'd like to give this person some advice, put it in the comment section down below. I honestly think there are certain points to this where I'm like, it can be explained a lot better. You do a lot of jumping around in your ideas, where I believe that you could actually, you rewind it a little bit and just give us a nice A, B, C, D, E, F, example of what you're talking about. But the actual idea itself is lovely. Make sure it's not so in depth with 40k jargon. I think the best 40k writers kind of forget they're writing 40k. Okay. Dan Abnett has talked about this before when he's talked about how he writes his books. He doesn't write 40k books. He writes books set in 40k, right? He doesn't write 40k fiction. He writes a good book that just so happens to be set in 40k. That's the best way to do it. It's the very same thing that you do with gay characters and trans characters, right? You make them good characters who happen to be gay or trans, right? You don't make trans characters and then try and make them good. You do it the other way around, right? Exactly the same thing here. That's my only advice to you. Hopefully you take it. Have fun. Those are the hobby nightmares for today. I know there haven't been very many hobby nightmares, but I wanted like a slightly more positive video of more cool things that people do in the hobby. On Friday we'll be doing a much more ranty one, so don't worry too much about that. Love you all long time. I'll speak to you later. Have a good one. See ya.